Hi there, and welcome to another BigLipz podcast. This week is episode 17, so we're really getting on the numbers with this one. So my name, as ever, is Sam Macaulay-Blair, and I am joined by the lovely Kathryn Maurice. It is my turn to host, and basically, for anyone who might be joining us for the first time, basically, we're two sort of former and current film students who love to talk about movies, so we've set up a podcast with the idea that we now have a platform to do exactly that. This week it's my turn to host. So the theme that I have picked is treats, which was sort of inspired by a bit of a chance situation that of basically some good fortune that that fell onto my lap and Kathryn's at the same time, which we'll get into in a second. First though, I do want to just issue a warning. There will be the use of strong language in this podcast. So if that is problematic or offensive in any way, then this is your warning to switch off. With this one, we're not really going to be going into movies as much, but I will mention that for any of the films we do discuss, there will be spoilers. Or there likely will be spoilers anyway. I don't know what Kathryn's going to say. But in the description, as ever, we will put the list of any films that are spoiled. So you are welcome to check that as well before watching the podcast in its entirety. But with that out of the way, I think we're going to get into it. So as mentioned, obviously with the theme of treats, I basically I was on the Odeon website for the local sort of Odeon where I stay, and I happened to notice that they were doing a Lord of the Rings marathon. All three films back to back in IMAX for the first time ever. And obviously, if you've watched any of these episodes before, then you probably know I'm a pretty big fan of those movies. Obviously, we did a cinema podcast before where we talked about how much we loved sort of cinema and the cinema experience and how much it adds to it. And IMAX is sort of, in my opinion, is that sort of dialed up to 11. It's the sort of the extreme end of that format. And even though I'd seen the Lord of the Rings films as a kid when they were released, I kind of couldn't resist the opportunity for the nostalgia, for the sort of quality of the experience. It was almost sort of too good to be true. I also kind of got really fortunate with my uni workloads where it kind of fell on a day that A, I wasn't working, B, didn't have class, and C, didn't have too much to be getting on with. So I actually could book it guilt-free and spend 10 hours in a cinema having the time of my life. But a funny thing happened when Kathryn I'll let you tell the story, but you went to check and see if they were showing it near you, or didn't you?
Yes, so basically I had gone on to see it after wholeheartedly encouraging you to book it, regardless of uni work at that time. I had gone on to the Odeon and the View, different cinemas and that, just to see if they were playing it here, because both my bestie and my boyfriend would have loved to see that, but discovered something even better. And of course, that was they were playing in the View Cinema the movie Jaws, which of course from the cinema podcast was my pick for movies that you would kill to see in the cinema. So that was just stars aligning, everything was coming together. So of course instantly booked it. And it was such a funny moment as well, like you were saying, because the only reason I had discovered that is because I was looking, because you had mentioned Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So
it was
Sam, if
pretty
you hadn't have seen that, yeah, I would have. Can you imagine if I saw it on the last day of it being in the cinema? That would just have been heartbreaking.
Properly crushing.
Yeah.
It was incredible good luck, and the fact that both of these movies that we both love and would love to have this experience with were shown over the same weekend was pretty bonkers.
Yeah.
And obviously just happened to land just after we were sort of filmed the last podcast. So obviously, I was very excited, you were very excited. I've got to ask, how was it? How was the experience?
Oofed. It was amazing. And of course,
Yeah.
I had my Jaws top on, because why would you not? I just went all out, and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna wear it. I was the only one there with Jaws merch on,
Really?
which was a little bit disappointing, but whatever. But it was honestly so good. Do you know what the best part was? That it was an extended version, so there was bits that I hadn't even seen before.
Oh.
So that way I was watching it and I was looking around and I was like, yeah man, this was the right choice. And I think, like we spoke about in the cinema podcast, the movie, it was just like, it's one of those movies that's just made for the big screen. It's made for the cinema experience. I feel like anything that Steven Spielberg does is made for the cinema experience.
Absolutely.
And Jaws, of course, is like one of my favourite movies. So it was just so good. You know, that way the whole time I was just like buzzing, and I just kept
Yeah.
randomly smiling because I was like, this is so much fun. One thing I will say as well is that it being in the cinema definitely made it scarier, and I don't know whether that was just because
Yeah.
obviously cinemas are quite big spaces, but they're also quite enclosed. There's no windows. There's like one way in, one way out kind of thing, and obviously it's dark.
Very true.
So there was that whole kind of like enclosed. The screen I was in was quite small, so it was all like enclosed feeling. It was dark. We'd splurged for the premiere seats, so that was nice. I had like best seat in the house, in my opinion. I wasn't right at the front, craning my neck to see, but I was like right in the middle. And yeah, there was obviously like the music plays a big part in Jaws with the creating the atmosphere and things. So that was like, obviously when you're in the cinema, you've got the kind of surround sound, so it comes like behind you, different parts of the room. So good. I think what was really funny as well is it, and I feel like I can say this because I was a film student, but there was this little group of what I would describe as insufferable film students. And they were like sitting in the row in front of us, and they were like leaning over each other, just telling each other little snippets. Do you know the way that you do? I do it as well, and I know
Yeah.
that it's annoying, but I can't help it. And they were like whispering all these things, and I was like, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, don't you worry, I knew that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I thought you were going to go the other way with that. I thought you were going to say there was like a row of people who were just like talking all the way through, or
It was nice. There was like a lot of people. What you could tell that people were there, but because they were like a fan of the movie. There was one weird though. The people behind us was like a family with like reasonably small children, and they were low key annoying because the dad kept leaning over to be like, "This bit's a bit scary," which was. It was slightly off-putting because I was like,
yeah.
"Please be quiet and just watch it. And maybe don't bring your young kids to see Jaws." But But other than that, no. I think the only thing that could have made it better was if I was entirely alone in the cinema. But yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That because I was gonna say so with me. Yeah, I mean one thing I wanted to ask about was how the audience was, because that was something that I really sort of noticed with the Lord of the Rings, was the fact that I was seeing these movies that and I went by myself, just sort of partly because I'm still getting sort of settled here, don't know like millions of people, but also kind of just wanted to go by myself. I love these movies, so it's a big ask, I think, asking someone to give up an entire Sunday to go,
Yeah.
go watch three very long movies back to back, and kind of wasn't ready to throw my sort of nerddom on them that quickly. But yeah, I went by myself, and initially I was very sort of tense, only because the sort of when I went in, it was like well, I was worried that I was going to miss the start because I had no idea if they were doing trailers or how long they were for, but like the cinema had an issue with like their QR code scanner, so they needed us to print out tickets. But then I got like directed to the wrong place to like get the tickets printed out, and they were taking ages to just kind of like explain,
Oh,
like,
that's
getting
so
printed off and
stressful.
stuff. Yeah, but I got there kind of like with the advert showing, so it was all good. And I asked that, because they'd said that, oh yeah, there's a guy, the name of like whatever the attendant was who was obviously working there. They're like, yeah, go up to him and he'll like sort of direct you to your seat. And I went to him and he just like gave me like the vaguest directions ever, which usually is fine because it's like there's like obviously the seat like row,
Yeah, they're just like rows and
allocations.
numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like row E or something I was on, but a bunch of the letters were missing for like the rows. So I genuinely didn't know, and I remember from like when I booked it, like basically all the seats in the area that I had booked were taken. So the last thing I was like, when I want to just sit down in my seat and then I'm there. The last thing I wanted was to suddenly like unceremoniously be like kicked off my chair once the movie started, and then I have to like run, because that actually happened to me when I went to see the first. So I went to see Avengers Infinity War when I was in Manchester, and I went with a bunch of folk from work at the time, and whoever it was in charge of the tickets, just for whatever reason, when we were going in, just didn't bother like checking what our seats were. He was just kind of like, we're just gonna grab like any random seats.
Oh
And
no.
we ended up splitting off into like separate groups, so we were in like pockets of threes basically. And I was sitting next to these two people, and the movie had like just started, and someone came over and they were like, "You're in my seat." And they were, and I didn't even have my ticket. Like the person who like was in charge of looking after the tickets had all the tickets, so I couldn't even like check the ticket and be like, okay, well this is my seat. I had to just be like, okay, sorry,
God.
and move. And I had to move to like a different seat, and I literally ended up sitting by myself for this whole movie, and it was just like so awkward. It really like tainted the experience, and I was just really worried.
That'd be funny. Like, I'd love to be your other work pals being like, because if they were further away, being like, what is Sam doing? Why is he sitting by himself?
They didn't even realize that I'd gone to sit by myself, because afterwards they felt really bad. They were like, oh, we would have gone and sat with you, because we didn't realize that you'd literally like gone and just sat somewhere by yourself. They thought I'd gone to like maybe join where the other folk were sitting.
Like a different crew, yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, at that point I'm not gonna like start like scanning the dark for people. But yeah, the guy literally, like, I went back to the guy and I was like, wait, which row is it? And he was like, oh, I think it's like that one there. And again, pointed me to like, he was just like super unclear. So I was sitting in this seat and I was very much like, I don't think this is the seat I booked. Like, I'm like fairly sure that this is not the seat that I've booked. But I can't actually, because that's what it was. It was whatever the row was that he put me to, the seat number that was supposed to be mine, someone else was sitting in. So I went to obviously the next number down or the next number up or whatever it was. So I was sitting there and I was like, I'm fairly certain this is definitely not the seat that I booked. Either he's in my seat or I'm in the complete wrong row, in which case someone is going to turn up with a ticket and kick me off. So I was just really uncomfortable for like literally the first hour, because that was just in the back of my mind that anytime someone was like moving about or because people were still coming in, I was just constantly like, are they coming this row? No, they've walked back.
Yeah.
Thank God.
So annoyed.
Luckily, I was, not only did I have like that seat the entire like 3 movie run, but the seat next to me was empty as well, so I had a place to just like stash my bag and stuff, which was very pleasant. But yeah, the sort of point I was going to get to, taking a very, very long time to arrive at, is the audience actually, in particular the people sitting beside me, actually really added to the experience, because there was something really nice about, like, and I think people looked and sounded and seemed all like massive Lord of the Rings fans, and I feel like that's not something that you book unless you are already a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. And the people beside me, it was just so nice to watch these movies that I've seen countless times and like could quote most of off the top of my head, to hear jokes that are like now 20 years old being like laughed at, and just it added like such a freshness to these movies, that was really made me appreciate just like actual being in an actual cinema with people, to hear people to feel people get excited by moments. Again, the sort of scarier bits, like they felt tenser, and to actually have like Gollum in the second one, to actually get like loads of laughs and stuff from like his lines, it just added like a total like a sort of fresh coat of paint to the film, that I was really sort of glad of.
That's nice. That's funny actually, because there were like I was saying that Jaws was scarier. There were moments where a lot of people in the cinema jumped, and including myself, and I've seen the movie countless times, and like it was pretty evident that the people there had seen the movie before, and even like the film student people in front, once it had finished, they were like, oh my god, I got jump scared even though I've already seen it. I was like, yeah, same.
It's the mark of A, a really good movie, and B, I think again it shows. I think it's the value, isn't it, of doing that kind of thing, going to see a film that you love in like a big screen when you've either never seen it before or it's been a very long time since you have. I think it shows you just how much that like format brings to watching a movie, because it's not just like a case of you're watching it but bigger. You actually do get a lot from like the whole sort of cinema experience, don't you?
Yeah, that's true, because I don't think I've ever jumped like sitting at home watching it.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. I've got to ask as well, were there any, like, because obviously this would be the biggest screen you've ever seen it on, I imagine, unless you've got a really big TV at home. Were there any like details or anything? I know, me too. Were there any like details or anything that you like picked up on? Did you notice a difference in like the sort of scale of watching it, or was it just you'd seen the movie so many times and you know like every frame in such detail that it was just a sort of blown up picture?
I think yeah, it was. It did feel like it was weird because obviously like there's a lot of. This was something that I kind of noticed watching it. There's a lot of like quite tight shots. So like if people talking, it tends to be like a kind of close up or a medium close up. So I think that did look really like it worked really well. And of course my favorite shot of the whole movie is the point when he realizes that the boy's been attacked by the shark, and there's like the is it Azoli it's called.
I just know it's like the vertigo trick.
Yeah. Oh, it was that way. I was waiting for it, and it happened, and I turned around to Ryan, and I was like, that was amazing.
That's the good shit.
Yeah. Did you see the Lord of the Rings when they first came out in the cinema?
Yeah, so I literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they came 20 years ago. So the first one came out December 2001, and then the second one went 2002, then 2003. And I didn't just see them in the cinema. Like I think maybe the first one, I might have just seen the one time, but with the second one, definitely with the third one, I saw like multiple times in the cinema. So it was
Love it.
And the thing that was because I think a part of this was like me being there by myself, which and being there for like such a long time for like these three movies, it led to this really strange experience where like. It wasn't just like sitting with these movies. It was like at so many different points I was hit with like different like memories and like nostalgia from like different points in my life from when I've watched them. And I got a lot of like memories of like going to see it in the cinema, not just like the first time I would see these things, but like, you know, times 2 and 3 and stuff like that. And yeah, it was really nice to kind of be like it was almost like it literally was like sitting watching it with like myself next to me, like different versions of myself. It was really nice to be like transported back to those like experiences and remembering how like certain moments felt and at the same time even like because we watched the Fellowship of the Ring in uni, and even that was like sort of coming back to me at points and just like the analysis and stuff we had to make on it, and it made me like appreciate the movie a lot. It made me appreciate all the movies a lot more because it's interesting watching it now, having like, you know, I've not watched the movies properly in a few years now, with the exception of like Fellowship with us, and it was interesting to actually like have a sort of like have that eye and to sort of know a lot more about how films are made and you know the difficulties as well. And it brought a lot more. I had a lot like much more of an appreciation for these films. However, one thing I will say is, so again, like absolutely love the films. I will say watching it on that big a screen, because they never released in IMAX. Like when it first came out, I think this is the first time they've been shown in IMAX, and obviously they've been like upscaled as well to like 4K, so the picture's like clearer and bigger than it's ever been. But one thing I will say is, with a movie that's like as effects heavy as it is, and obviously with a movie that was like really pushing the tech at the time, there are definitely some like cracks that show. There were some. I noticed at the start of Fellowship, it was like really fun. There's actually throughout the movies, there's, you know, you get like these really wide shots, and it was really cool to actually like see more details than I'd ever sort of been able to see before. But at the same time, there were definitely like some effect shots that I was like, oh, that that doesn't look as good. I mean, I will say you also had the opposite. There was also effect shots that I was like, oh my god, they look incredible for what they are. Like some of them hold up ridiculously well, but there are definitely some of the ones that I was like, and some of it just comes from, I think, like for instance in the Fellowship of the Ring, the first time you see Rivendell, where they're kind of like coming around this like sort of corner, they have like sort of like CG of like waterfalls and stuff, but the actual city itself seems to be like a matte painting, and it just seems to be froze, because there's like a waterfall in like the design of Rivendell, and on that I could see the water which wasn't moving. And there was a couple things like that. Like I think, for instance, like there was a couple things actually where like, it was like maybe a wide shot, and it'd be like even like a CG character like Gollum. I think that happens in the first movie where you first see him, and you can kind of see the roughness of like the animation of his face, and there's not, the lip syncing doesn't really work. There's also some like wider shots where like, I think in the third one there's one of like Sam and Frodo, and they're like standing up on this sort of like on the stairs. And Sam says something, and the sync is just like really off with the way his mouth moves. But again, you literally would never be able to see that unless it was like blown up to that degree. So there were a couple of moments where I was like, okay, these movies are imperfect, at least viewing them now. But at the same time, it's just like it's part of what they are, you know. And I'd rather the sort of like small imperfections than, you know, we George Lucas it and suddenly you just have like a bonanza of CGI and
Yeah.
superfluous content and needless changes.
That's
Other
a
thing I
good
was going
point,
to talk.
actually, because
Sorry.
there was a moment in, I'm sure I've read about it before, where the point when there's the guys in the shark cage and the shark's attacking it, I'm sure some of that footage was like it was like a real shark and it was actually attacking like a shark cage kind of thing. I don't think it was attacking it actually, I think it was caught in it, but regardless, it was someone had filmed it just underwater. It was their own kind of footage and they've used it in the movie. And obviously it's not shot on the same type of camera as the rest of the movie, so I think like you're saying, watching it on the big screen, it was a bit more obvious like that wasn't shot at the same time as the rest of this was shot, and it was funny. It was just like slightly noticeable, like just the camera quality wasn't as good, and it was like I think it was slightly darker as well, but I think if you were watching it at home or even like on the telly, obviously when there's adverts you wouldn't pick that up as much. But yeah, no, that's a good point.
It's funny how it does kind of like reveal the cracks a little bit, and again, just also these movies just being older and having seen them so many times, like again, the things that you pick up on you probably would never have noticed the first time you're watching it in a cinema, or the first couple of times you watch it in a cinema. One thing obviously you mentioned with the sound being so good, that was one thing that I really noticed with Lord of the Rings, was it was just like crazy enjoyable to have like armies charging and the ground literally rumbling, and then like Frodo and Sam sort of scaling Mount Doom, and again you just have like it's so like again I was there were multiple points where I was thinking I was like I'm never gonna watch these movies this loud ever, like probably ever again, because like as much as I would love to, you can never get away with like having the volume cranked that high in your own house. But like it just made me really appreciate being in the space where they actually can have the music like to pretty much the maximum like safe like level. And again, it just, especially with a movie that has, especially the movies that have like proper hype moments like Lord of the Rings does, it does really add a lot to both the excitement and also like the sort of like foreboding threat like that is established. You do really feel like the scale of some things because of the sound design. It was chef's kiss. Although one thing I'll say is so obviously with watching these movies back to back, it's a very like long time to be in a cinema, and
how was it like watching the same? Because obviously I spoke about before when me and my pal did the cinema day, and it was like taxing, but that was all different movies. What was it like watching just the one? Like, it's not the one movie obviously, but the one story. What was it like?
Again, strange at points, just because of the fact that so much happens, and obviously these characters go on like such a journey and stuff that you do. It's weird, like watching the first one and thinking like, oh, I'm actually going to see, knowing where it goes as well. It's weird watching the first one and being like, I'm actually going to see where these characters end up, and I'm going to get the complete like experience. And you kind of notice like repeated motifs and things like that that I've just never picked up, because I've never, as much as I've watched these movies so many times, I've never actually watched them all straight back to back before. And there's like, I noticed that for instance in all three movies, a major character, like probably around the same kind of like time mark as well, probably like not long after around about the 2 hour mark, maybe like give or take half an hour, there's an integral character that falls down a cliff or off something, and you think they're dead, because it happens in the first one with Gandalf, and the second one with Aragorn, and then the third one with Gollum. And it was just really strange. Like I just had never ever picked up on like that happening. And I think there's like a few other which I've now kind of like escaped my mind, but I think there's a couple other moments, and like there was some lines that were repeated that are sort of set up in one movie and then like sort of subverted in another, or repeated like in a nice way in another, that again I had just never picked up on. Like is it in I think it's in the first one when the sort of they're heading towards the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and they're on the stairs and it starts to break apart, and I think they go to throw Gimli, and Gimli goes like, nobody tosses a dwarf. And then in the next movie, obviously him and Aragorn are like sneaking right during Helm's Deep. They're like sneaking around the side, and there's like a big gap they need to cross, and he obviously asks Aragorn to toss him. And I'd never actually made the connection before between those two moments, and that actually using like that line, and just like it was just, there was just really nice moments like that he just, until you're actually watching it as like one continuous thing, you don't ever get. But yeah,
that's a good point, because were they not shot? They were kind of shot back to back as well, so that that's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Although the funny thing is that despite the fact that they're watching, and I kept wondering this, because it was hard for me to kind of separate it from my own experience and my own like view of these movies. But I feel like there's a really noticeable jump in quality between like each of the three movies, and it's not just in the effect shots, although obviously the effects do get like considerably better, especially when like Gollum starts coming into it. But there's also just even like the camera quality somehow feels like it gets better between each film, and I don't know if that's maybe just a case of I mean, it was all shot in film, I imagine, so I don't know if that's maybe just a case of like the editing got a bit more sophisticated and the editing technology got better. Like, I actually don't know why that is, why they do kind of look better if they were all shot at the same time. But yeah, I found that interesting that like despite these movies being shot at the same time, there actually was like I felt there was a noticeable like upgrade in look between each one. But again, I don't know if that is partly just because like I remember as a kid going to see them like a whole year later, which felt like such a long time, and feeling that each movie was just like the cutting edge of technology, and like, you know, the coolest a movie could look and everything. There was on the sort of subject of watching all three movies back to back, there was a good moment. So obviously like there were sort of trailers before each, there was like a break in between each movie, like not that long, like sort of 15-20 minutes, and then they would sort of do some trailers, and then obviously the title card, the sort of rating card, would show up for each film. And for the second one, I don't know why this happened, because it wasn't the version that we watched, but it came up, the sort of certification that came up on screen was for the extended edition of the Two Towers, and so not the girl next to me, but the guy next to her, literally just went, "Oh fuck, it's the extended edition."
In fairness, that would be my thinking if I'd seen that. I'd be like, "Nah, I'm out."
To be fair, yeah, I was also like, I'm with you there, mate. Like, as much as I'm like buzzing about these movies, I was like, now that we've started watching the theatrical cuts, I'm not keen to change it up and watch the extended editions. But yeah,
because they're heavily extended, aren't they? It's like a good, like a half hour at least into it. That's a long time extra per movie when you're already there for 10 hours.
Well, there's an extra half hour of like movie, and then there's an extra. The credits are also like an extra half hour longer, which obviously they play the credits in full over in the cinema. So yeah, I was very much like, oh god, please don't let it be the extended edition, because there'll be like an hour break between like the second and third one. But yeah, thankfully it was just the theatrical one. Obviously, having discussed like obviously our recent trips like Lord of the Rings and Jaws, I'm wondering if you've ever had any other, like, if you've sort of, because another thing we've not really discussed actually is like just cinema trips that we've been on this year. But I was wondering if there are any other examples you have of like ways that you've treated yourself, like whether it's like making a point of like going to see something in cinema, rather than like, you know, because maybe some things especially nowadays you can actually watch online, legally, through like a streaming service. You know, is there any films that you've made a point of going to like treat yourself and see in the cinema, or is there anything like, for instance, I guess another way that I loved or have loved, it's been a while since I've done one now, going to like a midnight release, because it just feels like, you know, you're seeing a film the earliest possible time, and you're in a packed cinema full of like loads of fans, and the atmosphere, you know, usually you do get people in Jaws tops and turning up in costume and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you had any other examples of like ways that you sort of treated yourself.
I think so one way was, I think it could also have been born from the cinema podcast that we did, but one thing I made to do before I started my new job, which is like a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday thing, is that I went to the cinema by myself, which I had never done before. So I made a point before starting my new job of just going through the week by myself where it would be quiet. And I went to see A Quiet Place 2, which was people at my
Oh.
work, like a woman at my work, she used to go to the cinema all the time by herself, and she was like, "You're a nut job. Why are you
Yeah.
going to see a horror by yourself?" And I don't know, that just, I feel like I kind of added to it because I didn't want to waste it. I didn't want to go and see something that I wasn't
Yeah.
massively keen on, or something that was just like nice.
Yeah.
So the only annoying thing about it was obviously it's very quiet, so you can't really munch your popcorn the way you want to. So other than that, it's very annoying. No, other than that, it was really fun. And the cinema was actually quite busy, but it was funny because there was actually a lot. There was like another like 2 or 3 people that were there by themselves as well. So yeah, it was really fun. I got like, do you know that way when I first went in, I'd never done it before, so I was a wee bit like, not self-conscious, but a bit like, oh, I'm here by myself, gonna get my popcorn, munching my single popcorn and juice. But no, I think it's important as well. Whenever I go to the cinema, I always like to get, even though it's extortionate, I always like to get my popcorn and a big massive juice, because I feel like it's just part of the experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're keeping cinemas afloat single-handedly.
Exactly. Bloody £10 a go for some popcorn.
I know.
And a wee thingy of juice. That's more expensive. It's far more expensive than the ticket now.
Yeah, genuinely is. How did you find the experience compared to, like, did you notice anything different to, like, if you would have gone to see it with friends? Like, did you feel more vulnerable, more scared? Did you get more into it? Did you get less into it? Like, how did it compare with, like, times where you gone to the cinema with people?
Well, I think I had, because I went to see the first Quiet Place with my friend, so I think initially, like I was saying, the first kind of like half hour, 40 minutes, I felt a bit like I couldn't quite get into it because I was a wee bit like para that I was by myself or whatever. And then, do you know that way I was like, who cares? It's the middle of the day. I don't know anyone here. What do I care if they're like, that girl's by herself? Like, who cares? So in that sense, it was quite different. It did take me a while to kind of get into it, but I don't know. It was a different experience. I watch films by myself all the time, but I do like going to the cinema with other people because you can, like you were talking about with the audience being there, you can kind of, sometimes when other people react, it makes it better for you. You get more of a reaction. Like if other people jump, you're more likely to jump. So yeah, I think I would definitely do it again, but I think I do prefer going with other people.
Fair. Yeah, I think for me, I probably prefer going with people generally. And I think a big part of that is like, it's nice afterwards to be able to like have someone to sort of like, discuss the film with, and just you share the experience with someone. But yeah, I personally find, because, and actually it's funny, I do remember, can't even remember what the first thing I went to see by myself was, but I do remember having that experience of just being really self-conscious for so much of the movie, where I was just like, like I just feel like I'm so aware of the fact that I'm here by myself, and but again, no one cares. Like, I don't think I've ever noticed anyone being by themselves in the cinema, unless they're like actively acting weird, and like thought anything of it. But yeah, like it is just, I think it's just one of those things when you're not used to it, you kind of need to like get used to it. But obviously you do. I think I find that if I'm by myself, I get a little bit more into the movie, and it's not that I don't get into a film if I'm watching it with people, but I feel like there's, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess there's just like, when I'm there by myself and I know that it's just me, I just get completely lost in the film, and I think it's because you're not thinking about the people beside you and how they're reacting to things, and you're just
I
kind of
maybe sorry, if you're out with someone, there's kind of like, not like an expectation, but like almost an expectation for you to kind of like be entertaining with them.
Yeah.
So like Absolutely. You kind of like the movie's meant to be doing the job, but there's kind of like a pressure almost to be like, to turn around when something's funny, to be like, haha, that was funny. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I think and like I've got, depending on the film and and what it is. You know, sometimes you make a comment to your friend or they make a comment to you, and it's part of the experience. Is a nice part of it because you're sharing it with them. But yeah, it's when you're by yourself, you can't do that. So you just get focused in the film. And I think I'd mentioned in the cinema podcast about going to see the Lone Ranger by myself when I was like 18, like 7 a.m. as well, and I was sitting in the front row. It was just like a tiny cinema as well, and there was like 5 other people in the cinema, and I remember like whenever there was like a joke, I would like laugh, and then no one else in the cinema would laugh, and I'd be like, oh, suddenly I'd become really like aware.
At this point, you're the person by themselves that's acting weird.
Yeah, no, I that's the thing. That was the one time. So at that point, I was comfortable going by myself, but that was the one time where I kept getting pulled out of the experience, and I was like, okay, now I feel like I'm a bit weird. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're the only person I know who said that they watched The Lone Ranger and laughed, so that in itself is weird.
I don't know, I've only seen it that one time, but I enjoyed The Lone Ranger. I had a good time with it. Quentin Tarantino likes it as well, so...
Well, that's fair then.
Exactly, although, yeah, the movie's probably not aged very well, and I think with it having Johnny Depp, Armie Hammer,
stars, yeah.
And exactly, it's picked an interesting couple of leads. So, but that, I mean, I guess we could save that one for another podcast. Have you ever done any midnight releases, any midnight showings?
Do you know, I don't think I have. I think
Really?
I do distinctly remember going to one of the Harry Potter movies very late. I don't think it was quite midnight. I think it was like 11 o'clock at night, because we got out at it was like 1 a.m. or something. And I think the Harry Potter ones are such a good one because everyone's got a story of, these are the people I went to see Harry Potter movies with. But no, like actual midnight releases I haven't, because I think they tend to, in my experience, it tends to be like, they do a lot of them for like Marvel movies or superhero movies or James Bond, which I'm not, like I'm not staying up past my bedtime to watch a Marvel movie, I'm afraid. But do you try and go to them? Like if you saw one, would you go out of your way to go to it, or is it just like happens?
It depends on the film, I guess. I think if it's something I'm like legitimately looking forward to, I really, and like you say, it's like franchise movies to do it with, isn't it? They're not going to do like a midnight release of I just suddenly can't remember any film of The Green Knight. It's as much as there's an audience for it, there's not like a rabid audience of like legions of fans that are like queuing up, like you say, staying up late to watch it in a cinema is not really going to go to the effort of like staying open late for
they'll pretty much they're gonna just stay open late for movies that they're gonna make loads of money off of.
Exactly, make serious bank off of. But no, I'm a big fan, and I think I can't remember the first one I ever went to. I feel like it must be one of the Harry Potters. I feel like it must be one of the Harry Potters, or at least it was through the Harry Potters that I found out they did them. Actually, it might have been Pirates of the Caribbean. It might have been the third Pirates of the Caribbean. I know the movie that I have like unyielding love for. Because I do remember going to see that at a weird time. I remember being so excited for it. I remember the staff in the cinema having like cardboard pirate hats on.
Amazing.
And they had like really, really cheap, like shitty pirate flags up as well. Or like really only like a couple of them hanging around the cinema.
I love it. There's nothing I love more than a theme. Exactly. Hence why I wore my Jaws top to go and see the movie.
Exactly. So I think that might actually have been the first one I did. But I do remember the last Harry Potter movie. I remember going to see that in IMAX. I remember my mum taking us because she really wanted. She's a really big fan of the books and of the films, and obviously she took us to see the first one when we were like really young. And I remember her actually saying she was like, I really want to be there for like the first time you guys see the very last one. I want to be there sort of for the end of it. Like it feels like a really nice way to kind of like watch the last one. I remember my girlfriend at the time. She's a huge Harry Potter fan, and just by chance she was away on holiday with her family when the movie came out, and I can't remember if she was like, you're not allowed to see it before like I've seen it. And I lied and just pretended that I hadn't, which was like our first date when I pretended I hadn't seen Robin Hood. So thematically appropriate. I can't remember if that was an actual thing, Or I'm sure that did happen with one of the Harry Potter films where someone had said to me, they're like, you're not allowed to see this movie until we watch it together. And I was like, yeah, of course. And then just went to see it without them. And then totally, then when I saw it with them, I was just, oh, shock, oh my God, this moment. Wow.
That is so funny. That must have taken some amount of like practice to not like react in the cinema. Like, do you know when you're watching a movie, like a horror movie that you've seen, and you start to get tense?
Well, weirdly, like when you're in the cinema, you're kind of safe because you're like, it's dark now. Like I can, it's a bit easier, and you kind of, if anything, you kind of know the bits to react to, so it kind of makes it easy to put it on. Weirdly, the difficult.
You're like facing the other way, like practicing your shocked face, like.
Yeah, exactly. You know the bits you can go to the bathroom in, and I think weirdly the difficult bit is actually the lead up, because it's the thing that's really tricky is to act as though you're still really, really excited to see this thing that you've already seen.
You've already seen it.
Yeah, and part of you's kind of like, I'm not even that arsed about seeing it again because I've already seen it like a couple of days ago.
I love it.
So I think like that's
that would have been so sus to be like, oh my God, are you buzzing? And you to be like, yeah.
Well, exactly. You have to go, oh yeah, I can't wait. Yeah. Oh, is it time to see the movie yet? Like it's things like that that get really hard to do because you forget to pretend to be excited. Actually, that does lead into another thing I wanted to ask about is are there any films that you have like gone to see in the cinema and you've been like, wow, that was amazing, and you've like made a point of going to see as many times as you can in the cinema?
Yes. Embarrassingly enough. I mean, other than the obvious one, which is Titanic, which is my favourite movie, yeah. So I made a point of seeing that several times. But the other one was the movie Mamma Mia. Because I honestly had like, it's such a fun cinema movie.
Yeah, I get
such a good time. And I wanted to see it with different people. I wanted to, like, after I'd seen it, I was like, oh, such and such would love this. And I was like, oh, my mum would love that. And then I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, no, I having not having seen like Mamma Mia in its entirety, at least I've seen like bits of it. I lived with a girl in Manchester, and her friends were very into the songs. So the amount of times we had drinks and different clips of the movie and stuff were on. And I'm sure I've had girlfriends that have like shown me parts of it, although I don't think we've ever like sat and watched the whole thing. But that I can totally see that being perfect for going to see in the cinema multiple times, and it just being so much fun to do it, because with like a musical as well, the more you kind of know the songs and stuff, it adds to the experience rather than like detracting from it. I think so. That makes a lot of sense.
It was really funny as well because when it came out, I can't remember when it came out, but it was like, it must have been a few months until Christmas, and I was like, I know what I want for Christmas.
Fair.
I was like, I don't care what else I get as long as I get Mamma Mia.
I'm pretty sure the flatmate, I actually got her for Secret Santa, and I'm sure I bought her the DVD of Mamma Mia too, because it and it was the sing-along version as well, because that had actually come out.
You don't think year. I've not got that video? I got both of them.
Quite right. I think.
What about you? Is there one that you were?
So obviously, like Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and stuff like that are films that I've sometimes dishonestly seen a few times. Probably the weirdest one I feel like I have was, and I think this is the movie that I've seen the most in cinemas, was the Lego Movie. Which I absolutely loved the Lego Movie. Like the Lego Movie might be it's hard to say. It's one of my favourite animated movies, definitely.
It's a very good movie, in fairness.
I really, really liked it, but it wasn't. And to be fair, like I was up for going to see it a few times. I think I went to see it like 4 or 5 times, and as much as I was loving the movie, I will admit by the last time I was seeing it, I was like, okay, this is a really short amount of time to have watched this movie as many times as I now have.
I feel like as well, because it's so, like, it's a lot and it's so colourful, I feel like watching that several times in the cinema would just give you a headache.
Well, the animation style, honestly, like, cause I do think the animation style is so gorgeous, and that was definitely one of the things that made it possible to see it so many times, because there's a lot of it. It's really fast paced and there's a lot of like sort of quick jokes, but by the last time I was like, I know every frame of this movie way too well. I am like too intimate with the Lego Movie now.
God, that song would have been stuck in your head for months.
It genuinely was, it was just like adding like kerosene to the fire, wasn't it? But yeah, I think every single time I went to see it with different people as well, so it wasn't like I was going with like the same few people. I honestly can't even remember who like the first person I saw it with was. But I do remember it was like when I was in like first year of like Glasgow Uni, and yeah, just going to see it with like different people every time, and it was really nice because like I think the movie's like so full of like so many jokes. It's interesting to see, and you do get when you go to see a movie that many times, you do get really analytical, of like people's
Love
like viewing of it. But it's interesting to see like what parts different people find really funny. Because there's some moments in the movie that you'll go see it with like one person, and they will like be splitting their sides on like particular jokes, and then you'll go see it with a different person or different group of people, and they will like not react to the bits that other people were like dying at, and then they will be like laughing their asses off at points that that like other people didn't react to. So that was interesting. But
that would be fun.
You do find like you're periphery watching as much as you're like watching the film when you do that. So yeah, I don't really know why, but the Lego Movie is the one that I have seen the most in cinemas.
How funny.
Oh.
What a random choice.
I know, yeah.
I'd love to think people being like, oh Sam, you want to go to the cinema, we could go and see Lego Movie, and you're like, seen it, but let's do it.
Well, I think the last time I went to see it was on a date, and it was...
Did you lie to her? Did you tell her that you'd never seen it before?
No, so we'd actually like, it was a first date, and I think it was an only date, and I think we'd obviously both been talking.
Did she not laugh at the right parts? Is that was the only one?
So the thing is, like, I think that was probably part of the reason it was like the most joyless experience, or the most like joyless of the like the what? Not, it wasn't a joyless experience, but it was the most like joyless of the like a movie. Viewings.
I know you need backpedal here. So.
Yeah, I know, as if she's watching it. As if she's watching this. But yeah, so I think we'd obviously be talking beforehand. I'm sure she talked about how like she'd seen the Lego Movie, and I think she'd seen it a couple of times as well, and she had loved it.
Was it the only movie that was on in Glasgow at that time?
We'd planned to go see something else. I think it was Cuban Fury it was called. It was like a dancing movie with like Nick Frost. There definitely wasn't a lot of movies out. And I can't remember why. I don't know if we'd got to the cinema and maybe it was like that movie was like sold out or something. There was a reason that we couldn't see the film that we'd actually planned to see. And I don't think there was much in the way of like other options. And I think she was the one that literally was like, well, we both really like the Lego Movie. Why don't we just go see that? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But because both of us had seen it, and I think had seen it a couple times, there wasn't really that much. Like, that was the one time where there wasn't really much reaction from either of us. So I think as a result, it wasn't that. It was the most like naturally the most like joyous experience because we knew the movie too well, both of us.
That's fair, yeah.
So yeah, it's a sad.
Yeah, because you can still like to your
Sorry.
Lego Movie saga. Yeah, because you can still like watch a movie and enjoy it, but you just completely deadpan watching it. Like inside.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Like,
And that's kind of what it was. Yeah. Yes, exactly, and that was what it was. And also the movie had been out at that point that, like for long enough that I think the audience itself had like dwindled to a point where if the people that were there weren't really reacting as well, so there wasn't even like the audience reaction to kind of like motivate the fun. So yeah, that was a sad yeah. So
Fair.
How else? Are there any other ways in which you have sort of treated yourself filmically?
So one thing that I really like to do is buy things. So
Capitalism.
I've always thought it was like really cool, like having something that is like not like an actual prop from a movie, but like a replica of something from a movie. So I always like I really like to. I've got like a Lumiere clock and a wee Lumiere statue and a wee Cogsworth clock from Beauty and the Beast. I've just got different things, like, if ever I see them and I just think they're really cool, so I'll just buy them. I always like to do that, especially, like, if you go on holiday to Disney and stuff, there's a lot of that. So I do have a lot of things in my house. I also, and it's not quite gatekeeping, but on that kind of vein, obviously I've got, like, my Jaws top, I've got loads of different things like E.T. and stuff like that. I just like, I think it's, I don't know, I just like it because I'm like, oh, here, I think this movie's cool. Hence why I've got it on a t-shirt. I'm trying to think, I've got as well, speaking of Harry Potter, we went to the big Harry Potter world in Florida and I got myself a wand, which is pretty cool.
Same, yeah, actually that's a very good point.
Love it.
That's actually such a good, I didn't even think of the fact that 18 as well, I think, when I went to the Harry Potter experience down in London, and it was just like the coolest thing. And I think we got like a £50 book that's like so dense and has like so much like artwork and sort of, which I actually need to like steal from home next time I'm back there and sort of dig into it, because it's really interesting, like the behind the scenes and all the art and stuff they attach. But yeah, same as you, I got a wand, which is just like way more exciting than it probably should be. But it is really exciting.
Like we bought them in Florida, and we bought them like in Ollivander's shop, and I've still got the bag actually that just says Ollivander's up the side. And I just think it's just so cool. It's like peak nerd, but I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I guess like film is one of those great things to be really nerdy about, because there is like so much merch, and the range of it is so cool. I think is the fact that there isn't really just, not like, it's like Star Wars, obviously you get like action figures and stuff, but it's not like that's all there is when it comes to like film merch. Like you said, there's like props and even like scripts, and like obviously there's so much like behind the scenes and like pre-visual stuff and like concept arts and stuff like that, and there's just so many different things and posters and stuff like that. Like I recently, I think I'd mentioned this to you before, like I just got, so for one of my favourite movies, as has been discussed on this podcast many times, is John Carpenter's The Thing. And I for years have just had like a DVD copy of it that I got from like HMV like way back when I was like 13-14 years old when I first saw the film, and it's served me very well. I think I only paid like a couple quid for it, but it literally for some reason is like a sort of like frame within a frame type thing, where like you put on when the menu for the movie is like full screen, and then you hit play, and then it's just like a tiny little like rectangle in the middle, like in this black void that for some reason is the movie. So you literally have to watch it on like the biggest screen possible, and even then you're kind of like, why is this so small?
That's so weird.
It's so
I love
weird.
that you persevered for so long with it as well.
The only reason I have is because every single time up until literally the last time I watched it, or maybe the second last time I watched it, but like every single time I would go to watch it, I would forget that that's a thing, and I'd start the movie, and every single time would then be going through the menu, and eventually I'd go, wait, no, I've been down this road before. This is what it's like. But just my memory of the movie is obviously like full screen, because you don't remember things like formatted really. But yeah,
I'd love to think like if you ever saw it in the cinema, you'd be like, wow, I didn't even know half my stuff was happening.
Genuinely, well that's the thing, and so I think I'd always meant to get the Blu-ray of The Thing, but for some reason just never did. But yeah, I recently upgraded to like 4K equipment, and yeah, that was literally like my first thought was I need to get the 4K edition of The Thing, because I can't do this box anymore. So I've passed it.
I need to be able to see it.
Exactly. But literally, like it turns out I assumed, because 4K has been around for a good few years now, that there would have been a 4K release of The Thing, and it turns out there hadn't been. I was really upset. I was like, no, like the one movie that I was like, and that's the thing I'm gonna get in 4K, and it's not even like, it doesn't even exist. And luckily, like about a month ago, I think I was randomly just on like HMV's website or something, and I saw that there was a release scheduled for like the middle to end of September of The Thing, of the 4K release. And I was like, you know what? If I'm getting this movie, I am going all in. And there was a couple of special editions, but the one I got came with a poster, which you can just kind of make up, is like just at the tip of your finger. So you can see that it's in it. You can't really see the detail of it, but yeah, it came with a poster. Came with like extracts of the script and like storyboards and like behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, like and I've not even watched the movie. I've not even popped the disc in. There's like special features and stuff that I've like never had access to that I'm really excited to get into. But I literally was just, when it arrived, I was just so excited to just have like again, like tangible things. Like I'd been able to like turn pages of like the script and actually look at like drawings, and I think it came with like some like stills that are sort of like nicely like on like sort of almost like postcard shaped like sort of bits of cardboard that are really cool. And just like it's just, I just love, even though I've not watched it. I mean, it is the month to watch it. It's now October, and that's probably one of those films that I would watch like most like sort of Octobers, because it's just like, again, like one of my favourite horror films. But yeah, it's just so nice to actually I just like the fact that it came with a bit of merch rather than it just being like a standard release. Have you ever done that? Have you ever like splurged out for like a special edition of like a physical release?
I can't think. Do you know what I have done is I do have multiple copies of Titanic because the cover was different.
Nice.
And I used to, like, when I had stayed in halls in uni, I used to keep a copy at halls and then a copy at home just in case something horrible happened. And I lost my copy of Titanic. But they cost like that wasn't very expensive. It cost like £4 or something.
Yeah.
But I can't think. I think I know what you're talking about. Sometimes you get them where they've got like little, like, say it was the Fantastic Beasts movie. I think they do like sets where there's like little cuddly toys of versions of that. But as I say, I'm more into like the actual stuff. Like, I think it's really cool seeing stuff in your house that's also in movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's fun as well because I've got like a little chocolate frog box. The chocolate frog itself wasn't very nice. But I've still got the box and I've got my chocolate frog card and it sits beside my my wand and my Harry Potter books, and it's just got like a whole little look to it. I like things like that as well, where that's not a very good example, but there's other things where you maybe people who aren't maybe as geeky as you you'd have to explain to them, oh, that's from blah blah blah, that's X, Y, Z.
Well,
gatekeeping again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I actually, now that you mention this, I think it was like a Christmas present that someone bought me. But obviously, again, I've mentioned it a couple times. And my favourite movie is Inception. And I think it was the year that movie was released as well. I think it was 2010. Someone for Christmas got me like Cobb's like totem spinner. Which I remember actually that being a thing because one of my pals really liked Inception, and she got the box set that came with the. She specifically went for that, and it came with the little little thing. I think I actually remember trying to find that and couldn't. I think I couldn't get that version of it. I think it might either sold out online, or maybe this was before I really bought anything online. Because I remember the copy of it I've got is like it's got a 3D like slipcover. And I think it was like HMV's like exclusive one. Which you were talking about, like owning the Titanic and having like different ones because they come with different covers. I'm a total sucker for that sort of thing as well. Like I really love like a well designed like cover or box. I think there's just something really satisfying about. And I've literally like it's one of the things I've actually written down is I've never had like a 3D TV or like I mean I think the PlayStation 3 could play 3D Blu-rays, so I technically had like the means to like watch a 3D thing, but again no 3D TV, so I didn't. But I own a bunch of like 3D Blu-rays just because they came in like a nicer box than like the normal Blu-ray, and it was like legit like a good few, like maybe like sometimes as much as like £5 more I'd be spending just because I thought it was like a nicer box art. No,
I'm with you on that. I remember seeing they did like kind of classic movies, like, you know, those like must-see movies, and they brought out like new covers, and they're all really cool. They're all quite like minimal, so it's just like little things from the movie.
I know what
like
you're talking
Full Metal
about,
Jacket.
actually.
Yeah, like I think Full Metal Jacket's just like the helmet, or the helmet.
Yeah,
Mad
Max's one is like the steering wheel, isn't it? And
yes, and it just they just look so cool. With like in the white background. I've got a few of them.
I love when they do things like that, and suddenly like they all match like that. That's one of the things as well that's really satisfying. Is again, like I mean, I'm a huge proponent of like physical media, and I like when I was a kid, actually like my pocket money when I had pocket money was always like saved, and it would either go towards video games or it would go towards like the Blu-ray release of like films that I love. Like I'd say films I love. Like I own a lot of movies that I kind of just enjoyed seeing in the cinema, and probably could have gone with never ever watching again, but I just owned because I was like, oh, I love just owning movies, and I love just being able to. At one point I really got into watching commentaries for films. I think eventually I got burned out on them, and I haven't really gone back to them for a while now. I will go to the odd thing because they can be really interesting. Like you get some really really good ones. Some of them are really really dull. So sometimes you also just get like I've watched like and this is more for like a TV show, but I've watched commentaries where sometimes it's like, hi, I'm like the costume designer, and you're like, really? That's who they got?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't mean to be nasty, but
it's just. There's not really that many stories that a costume designer can tell when you're watching a movie. Like, costume design is really interesting, but that's the sort of thing that, you know, you could have like a featurette that is dedicated to that, and it would be really interesting because you would then have like conceptuals, and actually seeing someone in their element is way more interesting with that sort of thing, whereas like when it comes to you watching the film, they don't really have a lot of anecdotes. So it's just a bit like,
yeah, because what are they going to say, like, yeah, this is the pink one, I'm sure they did more to say than that, but
if you look really closely, there's a stain there. That was me, I did that.
Yeah. To make it look like she'd spilled her tea.
Yeah, exactly. And what you do find with like some commentaries, the dull ones, is like sometimes it just turns into like them watching the film, and then
it just silence,
or sometimes they will describe what's happening on the film, and you're like, I don't need that. Like I'm aware. So yeah, but yeah, no. So that's definitely I very much get the appeal, and just like go for something because it looks nice on a shelf. And I think it is one of the things that annoys me the most, is like when, and like, especially in like franchise films, when like they change like the art style of like the release, like every single one. Like I legitimately own, and this is, I read the books and was like, I enjoyed the books like well enough, and I was excited for like the first 2 movies of the series, and really loved the first 2 movies of the series when they came out. And then 3 and 4, I was like, I went to go see them and was like, they were kind of fine. I could have definitely done without owning them, but I went to the trouble of like pre-ordering and paying a lot of money for the steelbooks of all the Hunger Games movies. And a huge part of that is, I know that's not what you thought I was going with it, was it?
No.
And a huge part of that is they were so consistently designed. And they were really like, the design was like really sort of like economical and really sort of like stripped back, and it was just like a really sort of simplistic but really nice like design. And I think they had like, there was like a sort of thing on the front, thing on the back, and then when you opened up, I think there was like a sort of like still from the movie inside. But they just, the way that they actually like, they were so like, well, because they even had like different directors and stuff, I think, for all the different films, and there was a lot of like change behind the scenes, but whoever was basically in charge of distribution nailed it. They're so like uniform, the design, and I genuinely, when it came to the last 2 movies, I was like, I don't even really want to own these movies, and I don't think I've ever actually put the disc in and watched them. But I was like, I can't not. They've done such a good job of like committing to this aesthetic that I've now bought the first 2, so I'm in. And they got my money.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah, I've definitely got a few DVDs that are still wrapped. Like, I would never unwrap it until I was going to watch it.
Yeah.
And I've just never got around to watching them. So that, there's definitely a few that I've got there that's still wrapped.
It's quite funny, I think, when you have something and you're like, you kind of notice it sometimes. You're like, I've had that for years.
Yeah, it's still got like the HMB sticker on it.
Yeah, still got the price. There is no price from it, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah, like $2.99.
I did not need to pay that much. Right? I could probably get it for like a penny now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess before we finish it off, do you have are there any other like sort of stories or any other examples you have of ways that you sort of treated yourself?
I don't think so. I think one of the things I always do, this is just like a little small thing, like if I'm watching a movie by myself, I'll always make sure to like get some snacks and my juice and whatever, and then like turn all the lights off and just properly get into it, like make a point of kind of putting my phone away from me so that I don't get distracted, and just like actually just sitting and enjoying it. I always like to do that.
That's good.
Especially with horror movies as well.
Yeah. I see, that's the thing. I'm really, really bad for if I'm watching things by myself, or just watching things, and it's usually a time thing, but just watching things in like chunks, which is a big part of the reason I love going to the cinema, because you have to just, digest the whole thing. Like right now, I mentioned this movie earlier. Right now, I'm currently literally halfway through watching The Green Knight, which was something I'd heard. There was like some issues with like the UK distribution of it, where like I think they held back because of the Delta variant, and so we were getting the movie a little bit later than like other territories. I was actually quite keen because it got good reviews to see it in cinema, but it's so the only cinema around here that I was aware of that's showing it is the Everyman, and it was like £13 a ticket. Whereas like I think other cinemas and stuff, when you go see things, are usually like about £8 max, maybe like £10 max, but usually like £6 to £8. So it was just kind of like, I don't really want to pay. And, you know, again, with it getting, usually I am quite trusting of like reviews and stuff like that. But however, I did just watch, so I'd mentioned again like a few podcasts ago that I was watching some Paul Thomas Anderson movies. I decided to watch, after really enjoying Punch Drunk Love, I decided to watch another one of his, which I'd always heard good things about, which is called The Master. And this movie, like, is listed as like, you know, some people like are tout it as like the one of the greatest movies ever made, the best movie of the decade it came out in, the best movie of maybe one of the best movies of the century, even though it's pretty early to call.
Yeah.
And I really struggled through that movie. Like, I didn't enjoy it. Like, I like almost didn't enjoy it at all. There was some nice moments. I could appreciate like a lot of details and stuff and the sort of filmmaking techniques and stuff, but I didn't really care for the characters. I didn't really care for the story. I didn't really care for the movie. So I'm back to being down on Paul Thomas Anderson. Sorry PTA. Sorry Jay as well if he ever watches these, because I know he's a huge fan of them. But yeah, but yeah. So as a result, I was kind of like, okay, I don't really want to spend like double the price on a ticket for the Green Knight if having just had my fingers burned with The Master, in case I don't really dig it. But having watched the first half of it, and I sat down to watch, I think 10 or maybe max 20 minutes of the movie, and I ended up watching a full hour of it. The movie is stunning. I am really loving it, and I am genuinely like, do you know what? I actually wish I had paid that money and gone to see it in the cinema. If you get the chance, I recommend it, because it's gorgeous. The movie's beautiful, and you can tell there's like so much love and like attention sort of poured into it, and it's just really, there's a really nice. I didn't really know anything about the story going in, and I'm not gonna talk about the story or anything that happens in it, but one thing that I really like is the sort of, because it's A24, I believe, sort of like distributed it, produced it, and obviously they like Hereditary, and they're big on like they're sort of like horrors, and it kind of, it's not a horror film, I guess, but there is something for me stylistically similar, like almost sort of touching on that, like it sort of like brushes against that like genre. There is something like quite sort of sinister, I feel, and I think there's like a realness and a sort of fantastical element to it, but it's done, I guess the thing that it reminds me of the most is the movie The Witch, where that's, is very much like soaked in its setting, and it almost like there's a really like strong atmosphere to it, and when the movie wants to be sort of serious and threatening, it is. So I think, again, I feel like the experience would have been heightened in a cinema. So there's one treat that I deprived myself of. Sadly, I should have done your thing and just like turned out all the lights and actually sat down in the dark with snacks to watch it, because
exactly
would have been the perfect film for it. So I'll need to, whatever I watch next, I will need to do that. I need to give your method a go.
It's so good. You need to make sure you do not lie down though, because then you'll just fall asleep.
Also speaking from experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Well, cool. With that, I think we can draw this to a close. As ever, thank you very much for coming and for all the sort of stories told. I'm glad that you had a good time with Jaws.
So good. Do you know what I mean? When I was sitting watching it, I was like, I cannot believe this is happening. It was such like a nice.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Did you have the same thing?
Yeah.
So good.
Absolutely. I was yeah, and because I was working like the days before it and stuff, and I had like a lot on like uni work wise, I kind of didn't really get the time to get properly excited about it. But when I was sitting there in the cinema and I was like, oh my god, this is like actually happening. It was just I couldn't believe how excited I was to watch movies that I've seen so many times. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So there you go. I guess to anyone watching, if you ever get the chance to see one of your favourites in a big screen, go for it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you as ever to those who watched. Thank you very much, Kathryn, for joining me in this and for sharing all your stories. Obviously, next time that we appear before your eyes, it will be Kathryn's turn to host, and I am, as ever, very excited to see where she's taking us. But yeah, until then, take care and farewell.
See ya.